Chapter 7. Completing the Misery Analysis. E is for empty. Empty has many faces. The first one has names like imposter syndrome, hollow and shell-like. It's the feeling that life, or specifically my life, has little purpose or relevance. The phenomenon of emptiness is extremely dangerous. It can lead to toxic behaviors, and in the extreme, even thoughts of self-harm, accompanied by depression, feelings of helplessness, fatigue, and loneliness. Friends and family members know that you can literally save lives by recognizing the warning signs of this phenomenon. If you are experiencing this, the best advice I can offer is to reach out. You may be feeling terribly alone in addition to the burden of emptiness. Sharing these difficult feelings can significantly lessen the distress. Let's examine where you fall in the frantic and frenetic scale. Do you try to fill every waking moment of your life with other people, endless hours of mind-numbing television, other mindless activities? Is every day a whirlwind of events? When was the last time you sat and quietly reflected instead of working off a long to-do list? When we constantly overfill our time and lives like this, it begs the question, what are we running away from? What are we afraid to face in the silence of our own thoughts? If you find yourself, reader, squirming uncomfortably and not wanting to read any further, that is good. No, that is excellent, because that signals a first step toward removing your protective layers and masks. There is a discomfort associated with lasting change. Are you willing to lean into it? The unwrapping of the empty phenomenon lies in slowing down and allowing ourselves to stop doing things. Some of these traps are social niceties or obligatory time-wasting activities that you don't enjoy, with people that you don't like, linked to you by birth or circumstances. Don't be afraid of quiet time. You are worth spending time with, alone and free from distraction. This may be a novel concept, but it is very powerful. Deep inner peace can come from it. Different from meditation, what I am suggesting is that you exercise curiosity and get to know yourself better. What a strange and alien concept. I know myself already, you may be thinking. Possibly true. However, if I ask, what else might be true? Let me propose an alternative. Have you perhaps, in trying to learn about everyone else around you, never really asked yourself, who or what am I? What would happen if you got to know and appreciate yourself, if you don't already? Do you believe in Cato the Elder's quote, "I am never less alone than when alone"? Of course, in a book about style diversity, we must acknowledge preferences based on our personalities. Extroverts may prefer to talk about a topic versus quietly thinking about it. I have a love-hate relationship with sounds, socializing, and external stimuli. After a wonderful and inspiring family reunion, the cool silence of my writing cave is pure bliss. After a week of solitary silence, punctuated only by the soothing hum of the air conditioner, I am ready to re-enter a sound-filled human world. The key is to assess the ratio of internal to external interactions that works best for you. Learning how to balance stillness and sound. Find the combination that results in your most productive self. To summarize, assess how empty you feel inside. Next, examine whether you are trying to mask emptiness with a flurry of activity. Don't judge yourself. Make conclusions based on data, how you spend your time, who you spend it with, how often you are alone. Third, go deeper into self-discovery to learn who you are and what fills you physically and mentally. What do we do when we are constantly in a state of emptiness? Watching a movie with my mother last night, a verse in a song struck me, loosely translated, "I have swum in the 7 seas, but my soul is thirsty and dry." An easy way to reduce your emptiness is to fill another's life, donating either money or time. Sitting in a plane next to a remarkable veteran, I was intrigued by his life lesson, give until it hurts. Challenging him, I asked whether he lived this mantra. He looked quizzically at me and said, You be the judge. I served in my country's wars and lost most of my hearing. When my mother-in-law developed Alzheimer's, I left a lucrative job and moved across 3 states so my wife could be there for her. And now, a grandfather, my sons and daughters' families live with us because they can't afford to live on their own due to medical and financial reasons. Yes, I replied in deep admiration. You do give until it hurts. Author's note: when trying to gauge whether your life is empty or not, you may get defensive, which is perfectly natural. Be aware of this and proceed anyway. We often experience a strong, even frantic urge to fill a void. Alcohol, food, drugs, gambling, sex, nicotine, entertainment, television, music, concerts, movies, chatter, and forced togetherness are some of our desperate crutches. Many of these things aren't destructive per se. There is nothing wrong with food, obviously. We wouldn't survive without it. However, after attending a mindful eating workshop conducted by the amazing Dr. Jan Chosen-Bays, I realized that many of us fill our mouths because our souls are empty. Empty can be cured. Empty has a non-compulsive solution. And, conversely, empty will never be solved if we deny to ourselves that the compulsion exists. If we spend hours gambling simultaneously on 2 slot machines, we may be trying to fill a void inside. What is the purpose of hitting buttons so mechanically that we do not notice how much money we have won or lost? For 3 years, I observed multiple aspects of these behaviors. Let's look at the whole pole of Las Vegas. Too much was my first impression. Lights too bright, sounds too loud, costumes too flamboyant. There was a man-made nature to the entire area, in stark contrast to the majestic Grand Canyon not too far away. To clarify, as with most coins, there are 2 sides. Las Vegas also happens to be a popular vacation choice for our family. The shows are amazing. There are fabulous things to do. Further, one can experience astounding uses of technology, as in the magnificent and realistic sky inside Caesar's Palace. Free shows abound, choreographed fountains at Bellagio, volcanoes erupting in Mirage, light shows on Fremont Street, all making it worth the visit. So it's not the condemning of a city, more an observation of the sadness and emptiness of compulsive escapism. This may take the form of obsessive gambling, or other vices freely available, no questions asked, in places like this. A very different mindset, obviously, from a group of friends placing a few bets before grabbing dinner and a show. I personally observed a young man in a red t-shirt standing in front of a high-limit slot machine late one night. The next morning, after checking out of the hotel, we walked past that same area. There was Mr. Red T-shirt, still hitting the same machine at the same frenetic pace. The t-shirt now crumpled, the eyes reddened and blank, almost as if he was afraid to get back to the silence of his hotel room, to be alone with his thoughts and company. Of course, this is an extreme case. Think of 5 examples of empty that come to mind as you read this section, yours or others. Do away with the judgments. Just think about the actual facts of these 5 situations. What was the vehicle for escape? Did the addiction get stronger and stronger? How does this story end, or is it ongoing? Reflect on what you have learned from these examples before reading on. Do you feel or have you ever felt empty inside? Most of us do at some point in time. And if the answer is yes, how often do you experience this feeling? Be honest. How do you cope with it? Do you dive into a bottle of, plate of, hand of, the arms of, something that makes you forget? Do your actions, choices, companions make you better, or do they help you forget reality? Our alumni group does volunteer math tutoring for underprivileged children because we were blessed with good technical education. And the surprising outcome is, we benefit more from the sessions than the children we tutor. There's no shame in suffering the empty syndrome. There is a global epidemic of lonely people. The solution to empty, of course, depends on your nature. If you find it hard to reach out to others, then confessing to feeling empty may appear shameful to you. It is through kindness to ourselves and others that we fill this void, and this kindness may need huge courage to recognize our or others' loneliness. We can try to fill that void in a healthy manner. Good with your hands? Join a Habitat for Humanity work group and build a house with someone. Very hard to work alongside someone for a good cause for weeks and not build up any kind of connection. Author's note: share this moment with me. The sun's dappled rays slipping through ivory blinds. The only sound, a laptop's hum. Writing these words, I visualize you reading them, and in your stillness and solitude, regaining your equilibrium, your inner comfort. So, the two of us, while completely apart in reality, are as one, aligned in the peace of this quiet, powerful moment. R is for relationships, general conflict, or one or two triggering people. Some people have a hard time making and keeping relationships. If that describes you, pay special attention to the section in Chapter 2 on emotional intelligence. Focus on interpersonal relationships and how you can make them mutually satisfying. Also, examine your self-awareness, usually low in people with chronic relationship issues. Assertiveness, extremes are both danger factors. Too high can be unpleasantly aggressive. Too low may cause people to disrespect you. To summarize, 1. Rebuild your most important relationship first, with yourself. 2. Analyze the 5 most critical relationships in your life. A. Take action on the most stressful one. B. Take time to be grateful about the easy ones. Rebuild your most important relationship first, with yourself. I am continually surprised by a very obvious, to me, anomaly when it comes to relationships. We disregard the most important and lasting relationships of all in order to gain approval in the eyes of others, some of whom are even strangers. We ask ourselves, what would so-and-so do? What would make that person happy? How can I help this other person? Without offering the same courtesy to ourselves. What is my relationship with myself? Is a critical, non-trivial question. Am I comfortable in my own skin? Do I blindly accept advice from all and sundry, or does self-regard allow me to ignore inaccurate criticism? Am I pleased with my achievements? Do I applaud myself for having worked so hard, not just for the necessities of life, but also for the comfort and independence I have earned? If I am not at ease with myself, this bleeds into my relationships with others. We teach people how to relate to us, how to or not to respect us, whether we are worthy of that promotion, that opinion, that shoulder to cry on. If you are not inflicting stress on yourself, that is excellent. You can now move on to analyze how you allow others to get under your skin. Analyze the most critical relationships in your life. A. Take action on the most stressful one. B. Take time to be grateful about the easy ones. Relationships in general can be stressors for some people. This could be because they have a superiority complex, or are low in emotional intelligence, or are highly demanding. This could be because, this sounds shallow and is unfortunately true, they are not charismatic enough for people to tolerate their imperfections. How will you gauge your competence in building and sustaining relationships? Think back to the last 10 negative interactions you had. Were they all with one person or with different people? If you have tension involving multiple people, this could be an indicator that you are the common thread. If you can easily come up with several examples of unpleasant interpersonal interactions within the last year, that is a data point. Don't get defensive. Look at both your emotional intelligence numbers as well as your conflict resolution style. There are 2 completely different sets of strategies for this section, depending on what the pattern is. The first question is, which are your most important relationships? Regardless of whether we are single or married, parents or siblings, there are some people that are precious to us, friends or family. We don't get to choose where we are born, but we do get to choose on whom we spend our time and energy. While our family can be, and often is, our main go-to for close relationships, it can also cause us the most pain, knowing all the skeletons in their closets. Some relatives or friends are callous enough to use this information as a weapon. Using self-awareness and emotional intelligence, list your top 5 relationships. Label them as high or low in terms of stress, rewards, maintenance, and triggering of emotions. 1. Person A. A. Most important in your life. High reward, low stress. B. Very easy to be around, unassuming, selfless, kind, low maintenance. C. Being in conflict with this person is painful. This happens rarely. Medium, negative emotions. Decision. Obviously a keeper. Huge positives, low cause of stress, no-brainer. 2. Person B. A. Your boss, high stress by nature of the relationship, very high expectations, tough, abrasive, high maintenance. C. He holds a grudge against his enemies. At the same time, he does provide you visibility with senior leaders, mix of high risk, which is negative, and sponsorship, which is positive. Decision. Complex. How many choices do you have? Most likely you will need to be in this relationship because of your boss's situational power. What you can choose to do is build a buffer, a layer of virtual bubble wrap to protect your equanimity and health. 3. Person C. A. An aging parent, high concern over their health, an amazing source of strength your entire life, mixed adder and remover of stress. B. Pure joy to spend time with, low maintenance. C. Worried about their physical safety as they get older, conflict with other family members around this issue, mixed, mostly positive. Decision. Complex. There is no leave or stay choice here. It is a given that you will be in this relationship for the duration, no question. What you can choose to do is make practical decisions, flex and always keep the positives in front. Manage this by giving good advice and ensuring the most practical help as time goes by, either outsourced or in person. Reduce the squabbles with family members over this. Always keep the end in mind. Your common goal is your parents' well-being. You get the idea. List your top 5 relationships and see which are fine as is and which need adjustment. Identify the one or ones that need adjustment. Congratulate yourself on the important relationships in your life that are fulfilling and relatively low in stress. What a blessing if those happen to be with your family, boss, friends. Now look at the thorns in your side, the people that cause you to toss and turn at night. Do the low-hanging fruit first. If there is a venomous relationship, not necessarily a venomous person, but the interpersonal dynamic is toxic, that is not critical to your survival, drop it. To clarify, this is with someone other than your top 5. We are practicing our skills by eliminating a minor relationship first before moving up to major, high-impact ones. Do it and don't look back. I have personally done this twice in my life. It was surprisingly easy. Virtually no guilt except during the actual conversation or while blocking the first few calls and emails. Just satisfaction that I had the guts to take action and walk away. You are stronger than you think. This is a low-risk drop, remember. You are not leaving your job or storming up to your boss or removing yourself from the life of your partner or parent without thought or calculation. Use the common sense that is increasingly uncommon to make your first practice selection. Now let's take it up a notch and look at the most critical relationships in our lives. A colleague described this, in another context, as, who are the people at home or work without whom life stops? And, conversely, whose life stops without you? If stops is an extreme word for your practical nature, replace it with becomes difficult or is hard to function. You are trying to manage your relationships to protect your well-being or reduce stress, permanently or at this juncture in your life. Analyze your relationships first and list options such as leave the relationship, redefine the relationship, reduce the stress while staying physically in the situation. What are the potential benefits of taking these actions? Equally important, what is the cost of inaction to your health, inner self, stress level? There are often elements of choice in relationships. I close with a quote found by my insightful and talented nephew, R.G. Truth is, everybody is going to hurt you. You just have to find the ones that are worth suffering for. If this sounds too cynical for an optimist, read it again. If you still have a strong, visceral, opposing reaction to this, reverse the subject of the quote. What if you are the cause, not the receiver? Have you never hurt every single person that you care about? The keepers are the ones who can see past the hurt to the value of compromise, forgiveness, and beyond. The CEO's Umbrella. One of my favorite clients is the CEO of an established Fortune company. Let's call him Tom. I have met with Tom fairly regularly for several years, individually and with his executive team. One afternoon, it was raining torrentially, as it does sometimes in Texas. Trying not to get my hair wet, I pulled out my umbrella, a thoughtful gift from someone else, and dashed into Tom's corporate offices. Just outside his office, Tom's assistant Pat rushed forward to help me. She quietly took the umbrella out of my hands and put it away behind her in a corner to dry. I walked into Tom's office, trying not to splatter too much water onto his lovely mahogany table. An hour later, the rain had abated, and I walked out of Tom's office. Pat kindly handed me my umbrella, neatly folded, and I tucked it under my arm. It felt a little heavy, but I was so engaged processing the output from the meeting that I didn't notice. Driving home, I was surprised to receive a call from Pat. In it, she said apologetically, "Debjani, unfortunately I gave you Tom's umbrella by mistake. He flies out to Connecticut this afternoon, so I gave him your umbrella to use." I immediately jumped into Yeti, the abominable snowman of negative self-talk, mode. First of all, how could I have been so careless as to not notice how heavy and beautiful the Davek umbrella was? Oh no, what would Tom think about my umbrella? It had been part of a welcome gift bag. I had no idea how sturdy it was. It was definitely not a brand name like his, and on and on. What was I thinking? When I went to his office a few days later, Tom's beautifully heavy Davek umbrella in hand, he generously insisted, "No, keep it. I want you to have it." Every time I use that beautiful umbrella, I am reminded of two things. First, what a fine person Tom is. Generous, approachable, humble, a servant leader. Very different from many executives I have encountered over the years. And it brings home the point that kindness at the end of the day gets more followership and share of heart than being right in counting who gets what. Even more, the umbrella reminds me of how much time and energy I spent worrying about what Tom would think about me, when, in reality, he probably never gave it a thought, that the quality of my umbrella was lower than his. Or, if he did, it was fleeting at most. Let's focus our energy on the important things. Y is for Yeti, the abominable snowman of negative self-talk. The most successful among us may still have an unwanted, constant companion, the Yeti of negative self-talk. Why do we waste so much of our lives wondering what other people will think about us? Why are we always the foolish ones, the wrong ones, the clueless ones when things go wrong? Why is it so easy to put ourselves down? These are non-trivial questions. The next time the Yeti rears its ugly head, do two things. 1. Reframe Yeti into, "It's really not that big a deal. Yet, I am blaming myself again." 2. Discard your habitual self-blame by inserting the name of a friend or loved one. If, insert your ally's name here, had come to me with this story, would I have said, "How foolish of you. What will people think about you? You're a failure. You can't do this." If the answer is, and in almost all cases it will be, no, then remember, what could you achieve if you left the Yeti behind? Reflect for a moment how much time and energy you have wasted in your life blaming yourself. Why do we allow ourselves to believe the silly names, the blame? Let's take the advice instead of Grace VanderWaal and stand firm when malicious people try to knock us down. I am not playing your game anymore. I am not clay. Another solution to the Yeti syndrome is by removing the I from the equation. How can you reframe the Yeti to not yet? I reference the work of the pioneering Dr. Carol Dweck, who talks of the power of positive use of the word yet. When someone says to themselves or to others, "This is hard, I can never do this," altering the response to, "I don't know how to do this yet," can change behavior significantly. This powerful tool is used with great purpose in a number of situations. The National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity, NAPE, uses it to improve STEM career success and teach students resilience, for example. A similar tool that works for me is the word unless. When you think, "Getting my dream job is impossible," what happens when you add the word unless? The sentence now reads, "Getting my dream job is impossible, unless," and your brain starts unlocking solutions. Unless I let my boss know that I want it, or unless I speak to someone else who has that job about how she got there. You get the picture. In order to free up time to achieve our mission, the next section will help us look at what we can stop doing. Chapter 8. Behaviors that get in the way. This chapter focuses on the way we behave in self-destructive ways, the things we do that either waste time or actually lead us away from our vision. First, we openly acknowledge what these projects, behaviors, and tasks are, and then we stop doing them. What will you stop doing? Too often in life we try to stuff 20 pounds of activities into a 6-pound bag. In order to get closer to our life goals, we have to stop doing something. It's simple math or science. Let's use a traffic analogy. If our car is constantly in the middle of a traffic jam, it will take way too long to get to our destination. Too many cars in front of us blocking our way. And a major accident or construction causes us to detour. Data harvesting qualitative interviews with over 100 people revealed an interesting pattern. Many of us live our entire lives on a detour track, waiting for the one day we will live our real life track. We say, "This is my route until then," and then we stay on this bypass until our life ends. Let's start removing the noise and traffic so the path to our vision is unobstructed, or at least the traffic is light. I divide the stop doing categories into projects, tasks, and behaviors. These three seemingly unrelated groupings get to the strategic, the tactical, and the deeper interpersonal subtext. To summarize, let's analyze how much fluff there is in our lives, self-inflicted for the most part. We will analyze each area and decide which items to remove or reduce. Stop doing. Projects, tasks, behaviors. Let us go deeper into each of these areas. Stop doing projects. What are the major projects you are spending a lot of time and energy on? Now, while considering your own project lists, be mindful of where you stand in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Make sure basic financial needs are met before you make drastic decisions, e.g., don't give up your only source of financial stability because it doesn't align with your vision. Establish a monetary stream which is aligned and sufficient first. Then, stop what is in the way of your true purpose. This category includes entire groups of things that no longer align with your vision. Author's note: I used to deliver leadership programs at organizations using their materials. Transitioning to full-time writing and speaking about this book's topics forced me to reevaluate time and resource allocation. As a result, I reluctantly discontinued these projects. It was work I enjoyed, paid the bills, matched my skill set, yet was not aligned with my purpose. Obviously, a critical factor in this choice was that I could afford to do so. Stop doing tasks. What is the scenery of our lives? What are the things that fly by, that we don't notice, that impede or accelerate our progress? Think of the ride to work this week. What were the 100 or more billboards that flew by? Day after day, we perform tasks, some of them useful and valuable, some of them just a matter of habit. Do we filter out the noise that detracts from our life purpose? Media and social media is all pervasive in the current environment. Let's talk about watching TV. How many hours do you spend watching inane television shows with false laughter tracks? Or gratuitous violence in a world where there are already too many senseless acts of anger and hatred? Stop doing behaviors. The Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, applies here. Reducing 20% of our unproductive behaviors can yield an 80% improvement in our productive free time. Obviously, both percentages are arbitrary. The point of the Pareto principle is that focusing on the critical few has significant impact. 2 behaviors to stop doing are saying yes to too many things, staying in emotional danger zones. It is important to find the root cause of why we say yes to too many things. Is it because we lack the courage to say no, or because saying yes fills a need in us? If we lack the courage to say no, let us practice the palatable truth techniques listed in Chapter 3. If saying yes all the time fills a need, refer to the 5 whys methodology in Chapter 6. Conduct your own root cause analysis in order to stop this behavior. Assess the danger zones and safe spaces in your life. A. Avoid or mitigate the danger zones. B. Build safe spaces with intentionality. Avoid or mitigate your danger zones. This behavior has 2 aspects. First, recognizing the places where you have to be on guard, where you have to watch what you say because there is a judge waiting to pounce on you. If you have a choice, reduce the time you spend feeling in danger. The second element of stopping this behavior is skilling up to protect yourself emotionally while physically remaining in the danger zone. E.g., if we report to an emotionally unsafe boss, recognizing that we are in a danger zone is important. We can mitigate risk by using EQ skills like assertiveness and self-expression to build a virtual buffer against her onslaughts. Build your safe spaces. List your safe spaces. Places and people where stress is reduced. Your home typically will be your first safe space. Common and additional examples may be family and friends' homes or neutral areas like a peaceful Starbucks. One can have virtual safe spaces also, such as a recurring phone call or FaceTime with a loved one far away, where you can be yourself and re-energize. Spend more time in the safe zones. Some of this time is with the people on the top 5 list, and some is spent with others or alone. It doesn't matter. Protect and nourish your quiet peace of mind. Let's reconnect with our vision. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." If your vision is compelling enough, you will find the time to start doing that which moves you forward. First, stop doing enough things to clear up that time. Then, use it wisely. Obviously, there are many more behaviors than the 2 listed in that section. The purpose is to illustrate common ones and then have you identify your most unproductive behaviors. Before you turn this page, make a note of actions to take and what you will stop doing. What is the first step that you will take? For example, it will only take a few minutes to cancel the first stop doing item on your list. Review your options and pick an immediate action. Start this process which, while uncomfortable at first, can save you time, energy, and effort in the long run. Stop doing projects, tasks, and behaviors. Danger zone and safe spaces, listing and actions. Section 4. Miserably Successful No More. This section synthesizes key lessons learned into the final solution set. Lighten up. Let it go. Handle tension. Experience now. Unleash your power. We conclude with practical next steps and action planning. Chapter 9. Lighten up. An original framework for authentic well-being. Together, we have gone through quite a journey, stopping our busy lives and taking inventory of ourselves. We have discovered our unique style and reflected on who we are, where we want to go, and what we must stop doing in order to get there. So, how shall we get there? When I share this framework in keynotes, the visual is of an ecstatic, beaming donkey with huge shining teeth and a goofy smile. A perfect mental visual of lighten up. Take yourself and life less seriously so you can achieve the important things. How does this idea relate to our collaborative success? In order for us to leverage our culture, race, religion, gender, and style, the focus of this book, we recognize our points of tension, handle them with maturity and humor, and unleash our power. The Lighten Up framework for being miserably successful no more. Let it go. Handle tension. Experience now. Unleash your authentic power. Let's unpack the elements. L-I-G. Let it go. In order to let something go, we have to know what we are holding on to first. While this sounds simple, it is difficult to execute. What has literally kept you awake at night? What is the nagging toothache of your mind? Who is the person that you squirm to be around and have imaginary defensive arguments with over and over again? What is the defeat that's bitter taste lingers in your mouth? What injustices have they inflicted on you? That unfair layoff, that crude moment, that passed over promotion, that meeting you weren't invited to. It's not the thing or person itself that is the problem. It is your barnacle-like attachment to it. Again, in a spoken version of this concept, the visual is a hand holding a glass with just a little water in it, with the tagline, "The longer you hold on to something, the heavier it gets." I suggest you physically try this. Put some water in a regular-sized glass or cup. It will feel light as you hold it strongly in the palm of your dominant hand. Do nothing. See how, in seconds, at most minutes, it is all you can think about. You will see, feel, and be aware of nothing else. You are so afraid of dropping it that it takes over your mind. The metaphor is a powerful one. What is the it that you must let go? Your response or emotions toward a person, an event, or a thing. Why have you held on to it for so long? Who can help you let it go if it's too hard to do it on your own? How will you measure your success in letting it go? What is your plan to do so, starting right now? Let's walk through some examples of what letting go can look like. For a person, the choices are letting go of the anger, or the connection itself, or the physical proximity. There is no right or wrong answer, just the one that works for you. I had a friend who I stayed connected with, even after we became very different people. After every phone call, there was a bitter taste in my mouth. Since the present relationship's negatives outweighed mildly fond memories of the past, this was a no-brainer. Letting go meant simply severing all ties. It was easy, quick, relatively painless, and freed up a large amount of BTUs for other more fulfilling connections. More difficult to let go was the sting associated with being laid off. That involved some introspection, because for a long time, my personal identity and self-worth had been associated with being this successful executive, that smart working person. And there was a practical financial sting as well, obviously. I know people who give away all corporate branded items of such organizations. Ironically, the act of physically letting go of these things may not cut the emotional hold. Wearing a branded t-shirt of that company could, in fact, be a sign that you have let it go. The point being, don't settle on the first obvious answer. Honestly assess 2 or 3 it's that you need to let go. Imagine you are walking into the living room or den of your mind. What artifacts and curios make you angry? Who do you not want to see sitting in your favorite chair? How will you get rid of them so that the room of your mind is occupied by the critical few people and things that you cherish, learn, and grow from and with? You don't want this room to be cluttered, depressing, or dirty. Clear out the cobwebs. Throw out the trash. Politely say goodbye to that old relative who criticizes you while sipping red wine on your beautiful cream-colored sofa. HT. Handle tension. We just completed an entire section on stressors, how to identify them, and which ones were holding you back. Hopefully, by now, you have several ideas on how to handle tension that will work for your unique personality and style. Let's tie a bow on it by looking at 3 elements. Analyze stressors. Change the story. What else might be true? Analyze stressors. Go back to your top 3 stressors in Chapter 6. Work toward reducing them. Change the story. By and large, we tend to inflate our own positives and downplay our negatives. The self-serving bias we looked at earlier. When I ask you to change the story, let me also remind you of the powerful question my mentor taught me. What else might be true? What else might be true? When I was laid off, the first version of my story focused on the injustice of it, how unfair it was. Who else was to blame? Years later, the story is completely different. While there may have been partial truths in my original story, asking what else might be true allowed other facts to emerge. For example, that a number of people had been impacted by the layoff, not just me. That layoffs were often a numbers game, which I had logically understood when sitting at the other side of the table. Also, that the closing of this door had opened up a new world of possibilities. Ironically, being laid off was one of the best things that could have happened to me. Understand your knee-jerk reaction. There may be value in it. Then step back and change the story by asking yourself what else might be true. EN. Experience now. How often have you been in the middle of something that could or should have been amazing, and your brain was elsewhere? How often have you been stuck in the past, or so worried about the future that you could not enjoy the present? Mindfulness has become a popular buzzword these days. It applies to many actions in life. Eating, breathing, thinking. I was reminded of the irony and challenge of this approach recently when I found myself mentally checking off items from a to-do list in the middle of a massage. This massage had been scheduled to reduce tension before a hectic business trip. How absurd is that? We live in a world where multitasking has taken on a heroic flavor, where we are praised for our superpowers in juggling so many things at the same time. We proudly boast about it, almost like warriors comparing battle scars. Working with Dr. Sandra Chapman's team at the Center for Brain Health was an eye-opener. She talks about the high cost of multitasking and strongly advises us about the power of one, focusing on one thing at a time. One of her associates gave me a compelling metaphor for how this works. Imagine an automatic garage door opener. Every time we click that button on the remote, the garage door starts to open. Imagine if, mid-stride, we suddenly clicked it again, and the garage door stopped, then started working in the opposite direction. Then we clicked it again, and it stopped and started in the opposite direction again. After doing this hundreds of times, what would happen to the garage door? The obvious answer is, it would break down quickly. And that, the brain health expert explained, is what happens to our brain under the stress of chronic multitasking. Our brain virtually opens and closes every time we respond to an email while taking an important phone call and typing up the minutes of a meeting. We gobble a sandwich while driving and listen to an audiobook at the same time. This is physically unhealthy and increases our stress. Some studies suggest that it can take up to 10 minutes to shut down one task and reopen it effectively. While we think multitasking is efficient, it is, in reality, both ineffective and self-destructive. The smart thing to do for both productivity and health is to focus on one thing, complete it to the best of our abilities, and then start something else. Shut out distractions such as email alerts and ringing phones while completing it. If possible, set up separate chunks of time, refer to effective calendaring strategies listed in Chapter 6, for routine tasks such as emails and calls. This advice is reinforced by Dr. Chosen Bays in Mindful Eating. She says that one of the best gifts of health we can give ourselves is to stop watching TV as we eat our dinner. She suggests that we slowly look at our food and actually taste it and savor it. Were we to mindfully think of where it came from and follow oryoki, the ancient Japanese practice of just enough, we could reduce the epidemic of eating disorders, growing obesity, and a host of related health issues. Experience now means first decide what to do with this moment that is not your right or due, but has been gifted to you. Ironically, the phone rang just as I was typing this sentence. Life is so strange sometimes. You can't make these things up. A close family member called to invite me to go on an exciting outing, doing something I thoroughly enjoy. About to fall into the instant gratification pleasure trap, I asked if we could postpone our outing by a couple of hours. The immediate and gracious response, "Of course!" So I will go back to typing up this chapter, putting my phone on silent for the next 2 hours, complete this section, totally disengage my brain, and try and connect the dots and make the framework come alive for you. Having completed this wonderful, exhilarating experience of putting my thoughts down on paper in a quiet, beautiful room, imagining you, reader, getting some value from the written words and ideas, I commit to wholeheartedly experiencing this perfect moment that has been gifted to me. As J.R.R. Tolkien said, the only thing we have to decide is what to do with the time we have been given. Decide on one thing, something that is valuable, that aligns with your vision, or increases yours or someone else's well-being. Then do it to the absolute best of your ability, being in that moment and in no other, doing that thing and no other. Try it. It just might change your entire life. U.P. Unleash Power. Those of you who have read Unleash the Power of Diversity will recognize the core concepts. When we are truly ourselves, we can amaze ourselves with our authentic power. First, we have to understand our innate biases and destructive stereotypes about the limitations of people in certain groups. Next, we have to boldly shatter these tired, culture, gender, style, generation, and other stereotypes. First our own, then others. What does unleashing your authentic power look like? It looks like moving from being laid off, devastated, afraid, to being blessed enough to touch thousands of people with one's written and spoken words. It looks like asking, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And then doing it. It looks like imagining something big, no, huge, and believing, truly believing that you can achieve it. It looks like soaring. It looks like one moment in time when I'm more than I thought I could be, when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away and the answers are all up to me. Whitney Houston. Please read this brilliant quote by Marianne Williamson once, quickly, then stop. Think about it, and then read it again, slowly, and absorb it. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Conclusion and action planning. Let's look back at our journey together. We started out by asking, who are you? What do you want out of your life? Where are you relative to your vision? We then increased our self-awareness using multiple tools: emotional intelligence, communication styles, behavioral norms. We discovered surprising style biases and stereotypes that were unique to our diverse personalities. Next, we analyzed what makes us miserably successful, taking a deeper dive into major stressors. We introduced easy-to-remember acronyms for misery and stress, synthesizing years of data collection into actionable insights. We looked at ways to reduce our stress and a logical approach for us to stop doing certain tasks, projects, and behaviors. Finally, we put it all together with the original Lighten Up framework. Let it go. Handle tension. Experience now. Unleash authentic power. Action planning. Now it is time for us to design specific actions to implement the book's learning. What is one thing that you will start doing as a result of reading this book? One thing that you will stop doing? What is the most important idea or thought that will stay with you? Thank you for your support through this journey of reflection, self-discovery, and call to action. If this book has been of value to you, please pay it forward. I close with a stanza from the brilliant David Whyte. He talked about the popular pilgrimage to Camino de Santiago in Spain. When pilgrims reach the end of their journey at the water's edge, many take off the boots that served them so well in the past and put on a new pair of shoes for this next path forward. What will your new shoes look like? What are the boots that have served you well and are no longer needed? How will you discard them to make space for your new path? Travel with me across the miles and imagine David Whyte himself sharing his powerful poem with us. Finisterre, the road in the end taking the path the sun had taken, into the western sea, and the moon rising behind you as you stood where ground turned to ocean. No way to your future now, but the way your shadow could take, walking before you across water, going where shadows go. No way to make sense of a world that wouldn't let you pass, except to call an end to the way you had come, to take out each frayed letter you had brought and light their illumined corners, and to read them as they drifted on the late western light, to empty your bags, to sort this and to leave that, to promise what you needed to promise all along, and to abandon the shoes that brought you here right at the water's edge, not because you had given up, but because now you would find a different way to tread, and because through it all, part of you would still walk on, no matter how, over the waves. David Whyte, from Pilgrim, copyright 2014, Many Rivers Press. I see you. You are as me, caught in what Covey called the thick of thin things. Take a deep breath as I did a moment ago. There is no moment in time but this one, fleeting and ephemeral, powerful in its fragility. Together, shall we seize this moment and, gathering momentum, make it momentous? All movements start with a single, small step. What will yours be? Debjani Mukherjee Biswas.
Thank you for listening to Miserably Successful No More, Power Over Stress, a Made for Success Studios production. Text copyright 2017 by Performance Publishing Group. Production copyright 2020 by Made for Success Studios. All rights reserved. For more products just like this, visit our website at madeforsuccesspublishing.com.